Call to order the March 1st, 2012 business meeting. Will the administrator take roll?
Roll call. Commissioner Damon,
Here.
Commissioner Leininger,
Here.
and Commissioner Savas.
Here.
All right. He'll announce we're missing 2 people.
Yes, and just to state that Commissioner Lehan and Commissioner Bernard are attending the NACO conference and will not be in attendance today. And with that, we'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, thanks.
I'll ask my fellow commissioners if they'll approve the order of the agenda.
I move we approve the order of the March 1st, 2012 business meeting agenda.
And I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. The order of the agenda is approved. We have no discussion items for today, so we'll go straight into citizen communication. And the first person I have is Sherry Shang. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, thank you so much. For the record, my name is Sherry Shun, residing at 5725 River Street, West Lynn. I have been a resident of Clackamas County since year 2000. And today, the subject of my communications is about Citizen News, the newspaper produced by the county and goes to every citizen household. I know you're familiar with this means of communications, and I provided a sheet of handout for your information about the event of, the Clackamas County Master Gardeners that was held last Saturday. Now, if you look at that sheet of information, it would look like I'm bragging about what we have done. And, that's 50% of the purpose of this communications. As you may know, Master Gardeners are volunteer educators trained by Oregon State University Extension Service. And I know you're familiar with the many good things Extension does in Clackamas County. But Master Gardeners has the added help of a local county-based chapter, which is its own 501c3 organization. Currently, we have over 350 dues-paying members in this chapter. So these are people who are currently going through the training or were trained in past years and continue to be active. And we stage and organize many events in our community in order to spread gardening information. Now, on the subject of Citizen News, we have been doing a lot of great things, and one of the challenges is to get the information out to prospective participants. And the beauty this time with this event is there was information included about the event in this issue of Citizen News that came out in early January. You will not believe the phone calls and email inquiries I had received before the event. And in fact, about 2/3 of the folks who attended Saturday heard about the event through Citizen News, if you can believe it. And the beauty is not just in us being able to have more people to reach, but also we had a much broader cross-section of folks. We saw a lot more parents with kids. We saw a lot more people who are not dedicated long-term gardeners, because our means of communications tend to focus on people who already are gardeners and know how to use those avenues of information. So I'm just here to thank you and let you know about this very successful partnership. And I see I have 8 seconds left. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming and speaking with us today, and everything you are doing. I know you and I met here a couple months ago at the garden. Yes, and I just really appreciate all the fine work you and OSU Extension Service does. Thank you.
And I just want to say, this is really helpful feedback for us about Citizen News. I think, from time to time, people wonder about whether or not we should do a countywide mailing such as that 4 times a year. And this is exactly the kind of feedback that I think is so valuable for us to continue that communication outreach. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much, because speaking as a citizen who get that information, I do go through it. And I think the most recent issue has something about the solar project.
Yep.
And my husband and I both paid attention to it. And he said, you should go to this website and check and follow up. So we do use the information. Now, obviously, you speak to a much broader subject of all matters that you have jurisdiction over. And we're not always that interested in every aspect of it. But it's useful to have an overview of what county government does. And I guess the question always is, Master Gardener events, why should that's not a county function, why should that be included in there? And I guess my point of this communication today is citizens in Clackamas County are interested in what we do. And we're not just providing, old wives' tale information about, well, this is what works in my garden and therefore you should try it. The information we share are based on research. They come out of Oregon State University. We're trained by Extension, so the work we do is of quality, and dedicated volunteers are very committed to helping interested gardeners in our community to be more productive. And the shortcuts we provide people, because it's been proven and practical and it's based on research, really help people become successful. But we on our own can only do so much, and your help in just giving us that exposure in your publication has helped us reach so many people. And I included the evaluation results on the bottom to show, again, folks know this is a quality thing. They put in a lot of time once they show up there to attend multiple classes, and they get a lot out of it. And we know that will continue to help them be successful and help us and the county to reap benefit.
Thanks, Sherry.
I'd like to speak to 2 aspects of your work. One, I brought my kids to a Master Gardener event. Perhaps it was this very event about a year ago, and it is a great family event. There are activities for kids where you can plant things and learn things and eat things, and it covers all the bases. And second, there is an upcoming seminar, I believe, on Saturday, where you and your colleagues will be teaching people to more successfully grow tomatoes, which is certainly something that I need some help with. So I love your programming. You're an excellent public speaker, funny and informative, and your events are really dynamic and interesting. So I encourage everyone to go.
Thank you very much. The Growing Tomato event is called Secrets of the Tomato Masters. And we have 3 tomato masters. Between the 3 people, they grow more than 50 varieties, more than 100 plants every year. So we're providing science-based information, but we're also able to converse with folks about the nuances in applying the science in order to reap early harvest of tomatoes. And that's March 10th, a week from Saturday.
Great.
At the Milwaukee Center.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for the opportunity.
The next card I have is John Ludlow.
Commissioners, John Ludlow, candidate for Clackamas County Commission Chair. Today I want to briefly go over something I requested of the county staff and they gave to me, which was the 2008 Community Survey, in which a quote from it says, "Overwhelmingly, the current study's respondents prioritized maintenance and upgrades such as widening and paving for current roads." I think you've known that for a while. That was 2008, and they noted that that concern doubled from the year 2000. Your answer, as recently seen in the Oregonian, was to think of a new tax, a user fee, to find money for those roads. I spoke last time when I was here about the Joint Policy Advisory Committee of Metro and how they are holding over $60 million of gasoline tax money and vehicle registration money to fund light rail. It seems a priority of the citizens to bring that money home to where it belongs, where the rubber meets the road. And that's not just, again, for citizens. That's for the businesses that we often talk about that are so important, and jobs as well. In addition to that, I was fortunate enough to be with the sheriff when he spoke this last week at a gathering. And I asked him, because he was talking about the recent levy that they passed, and overwhelmingly in favor, of course, because one of the other priorities of citizens is that is public safety. And so and considering that over 40% of the general fund goes to public safety, we would think that that's a priority. However, I asked him, since for over 30 years, the sheriff has provided protection in the Clackamas Town Center area, how much money he would be realizing come 2013 when it finally came out of urban renewal, and all the money from that, being taxed from that, would go back to core services. He replied to the entire group that it would be zero. He would get zero money from Clackamas Town Center, and that is because you have made the obligation to take the county's portion of returned increment from the urban renewal funds to light rail. So he also stated that there would be no reason to have sent to the voters and to be passed this last levy if he would have got that money from Clackamas Town Center. So again, there's a misplaced priorities here in regards to where funds go and the priorities as spelled out by the voters of this county. Certainly in this survey, like I say, roads are everything. We're ignoring that, talking about new taxes instead of bringing that JPAC money home where it belongs. And public safety, which is this probably the second priority or even the first priority to county citizens. So I wish you would reapportion your priorities and bring that money home to where it belongs. Thank you.
Just wanted to clarify, and I think one of the last times Mr. Ludlow spoke, that we try to clarify that there is no plans for any tax or road tax, and that the discussion was centered around a survey question, which we do every year, and I think we'll have results here in the coming weeks.
Within a couple weeks, yes.
Yep.
I appreciate your coming in, and I think you articulate your perspective really well, and I thank you for providing it. There are 2 points of information I want to ask our county council, if you happen to know, or our administrator, if you happen to know. I believe that the Enhanced Law Enforcement District will get roughly $400,000 a year when the Town Center Urban Renewal District is retired, and I think that the amount that will return to the general fund when the Town Center District is retired is something like 1.4 or 1.5 million a year. If you happen to know, great, but I'm going to follow on with 1 point. And I believe the amount that the public safety levy generates a year is between 9 and 10 million. So while I certainly respect that there are people in our community who don't feel that funding should go to light rail, were no money from the town center that returns to the general fund to be put in any other use other than public safety, it would only be 1.5, 1.4 million a year, not 9 or 10 million a year. So, do you have any factual information on that?
You are correct with your amount raised from the levy on an annual basis. It's between $9 and $11 million. I'm not sure about the town center, though.
The town center, you're approximately right on that. The estimates are between about 1.4 to as much as 1.7, I think, million. For the county portion of the overlapping district, that's the county general fund. But the enhanced law enforcement district is a separate area that would get some money. I'm not sure about the $400,000 number, but there is certainly money that would be accrued to that. And the number for the public safety levy is a little over $9 million current year.
Great. The next card I have is Yvonne Lazarus.
Good morning. I'm Yvonne Lazarus, and I live in Oak Grove. This last weekend, I took a walk down McLaughlin Boulevard, and the sequoias that are to be cut down through there absolutely, I think, brought me to my knees. Those trees have been there longer than me. And I'm 30 years away from 100. And I know that those trees are older than that. Last month, when Congressman Schrader was here, I followed him out. And I spoke with him very briefly. I could only walk to the car with him. After I spoke with him, I came in and had a conversation with Jamie and Ann and Charlotte. And in that conversation, I spoke to Charlotte and said, in talking to the congressman, I asked him if TriMet could sue us. Now, Charlotte looked at me back. She sat back. And the congressman told me that they couldn't do it. Jamie said, "That's off the cuff, isn't it, Yvonne?" And I looked at her and said, well, yes, it was a conversation between him and I. And she asked me if he was an attorney, and I said no. I didn't ask him for his credentials. You know, I'm real upset that I know our commissioners are not going to go to Washington and ask for what we need. I'm very upset. I would never have ever sat down in front of Clackamas County, who's watching, and say the things I'm saying right now. This has to stop at Tacoma Street. Everybody says, well, we're not trying to stop it. Well, we are. There's a majority out there. There's a LUBA appeal. There's we're going to have a special vote in September. This is a sad thing that is going on here. I know you're going later, Ann. 1 minute, just a couple seconds. I know you're going to Washington. I want them to watch this. I really do not believe Commissioner Bernard or Charlotte give a hoot about what I'm saying, but I want it heard because I think they have their own private agenda with Carlad, or whatever her name is. I'm going to stop there, and you have a good trip.
Thanks, Yvonne. The next card I have is Les Poole.
Good morning. I don't know if the camera can catch this, but Yvonne was kind enough to ask me to go on that walk with her. This is me standing next to one of the sequoia trees, and she's referring to the trees along the trolley trail on public property that will be wiped out so that this overpass, this, I believe, environmentally offensive design across Kellogg Lake and over the top of the trolley trail in the last segment of the Milwaukee Light Rail line. It's just an environmental nightmare. You've heard me say before that the Park Avenue segment contains every problem that TriMet faces. Every problem. Shortage of money. Failure to follow a land use final order that said, clearly mandated, clearly, you delay the Park Avenue segment. You temporarily end this line at Lake Road, right down by Jim Bernard's property, where he has refused repeatedly to recuse himself, which I find ridiculous. What other problems are there in that segment? No return on investment. If the county doesn't spend the $25 million, it doesn't kill the project. Look at the Milwaukee City Council, August 31st, 2010 special session, when TriMet finally announced, they only had 50% instead of 60% federal funding. They knew in '09. I suggest you and the viewers Google Clackamas Review. There's an article, TriMet knew in '09, that clearly articulates that they applied for 50 and 60% funding. And here we are in February of 2010, and the commissioners signed an intergovernmental agreement, not a binding contract, and that agreement was based on a 60% federal match that I don't believe anybody knew was coming. It's really unfortunate this has been foisted on us. Very unfortunate. And I've challenged the approval of that bridge. And I want to reiterate why. Because TriMet failed to do an alternative analysis to spend the time to design something that would have got across Kellogg Lake and through all of those parklands and resources appropriately. It didn't happen because they claimed that the impacts to the trolley trail were minimum, de minimis. I'm going to leave you an article I've left before that shows the trolley trail with the light rail overpass on top of it. Regardless of whether there's a technicality or TriMet spends enough money to somehow negate the LUBA appeal, there's other legal issues coming. And it's really unfortunate, I just want to close by saying it's really unfortunate that the community has been torn apart by this. And there are over 11,000 signatures for a vote. Regardless of how that impacts this project, that's the best polling information you have right there. When the citizens collect 7,000 signatures in 6 days, that's your polling information. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next I have up is Mariana Moore.
Yes, Mariana Moore from Gladstone. Going to change the topic a little bit, I guess, but it's all the same issue. And Gladstone has the requirement, supposedly, to build a new library and take over most of the area that's currently served by the Oak Grove Library. And we have filed our signatures. We are approved. We'll be on the May election. And but this is only a Gladstone vote. The other people affected won't really have a say in this. And most of them are probably not aware even that their library is supposed to close. It never was really clear in the measure that was passed back in 2008 to create the library district that you people are in charge of. Anyway, as we look at this, Kevin Johnson put in a request for a lot of information, and Mr. Wheeler was kind enough to finally respond. Quite a large packet of things. But one of the things that comes out in it, if Gladstone doesn't build their library, Oak Lodge can stay open. And we want the people to know that this is going on, and we want to encourage the Gladstone people to get out and vote so that we have a right to have a say in whether we spend all this money on a library that's in a terrible location. I've asked the commissioners to come and look at what they're talking about because it really is an awful location. It is barely served by any public transportation. Even in their wonderful flyer they put out to support this back in August, which was also basically illegal, they have half a page of how you could get there on the bus and how many transfers you'd have to take, and some that only run every 90 minutes. You're going to the library to pick up a book, and now you'll have to pay $2.50 each way, and you may have 15 minutes at the library, and then you've got to find another bus. I mean, it's absolutely in the wrong place. And urban development and this sort of thing, a library is supposed to be in the central business, the city center, where we presume is where the city hall is and all these other things. And as they've been talking about other priorities, Gladstone has lots of priorities. They've got water shooting out of their manholes when it rains. They've got sewer water overflowing into the river. They've got all kinds of problems with the roads, and the city hall is about to fall down. They've now got an estimate of $2,900,000 to fix it. And so we're talking about priorities here and where the money's being spent. The $1,000 that was sent to Gladstone and all the other libraries to fix them up was not used that way in Gladstone. They've spent most all of it planning their wonderful library. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last card I have is Mac Woods.
Well, you all know me. I'm Mac. Good morning, Cammy. I need to talk to you two after this meeting because you assured us that you'd give some information regarding the Sylvia Kraljev, and she's waited patiently. An elderly lady, she's over 90 years old. It's happening exactly the same thing that happened to Miss English in Multnomah County. That's just not right. If you can't do something, you commissioners make the rules for the planning boards. If you can't do something right for the seniors, there's something wrong here in this whole mess. It's kind of looking like a mess. I've been coming here for a long time. Some of the commissioners, we don't understand your motive. Where are you going? I'm specifically thinking about two that's not here. Who's paying for this trip back to D.C. and what's the purpose of it? I'm talking about the real purpose. It seems to be light rail and another thing thrown in there about veterans. I'm telling you, I'm a veteran. A lot of the people that claim to be veterans are truly not veterans. They're sick, lame, and lazy. They got washed out in boot camp because they didn't add up. They found problems with them. They kicked them out. They're not a veteran. Boot camp is nothing more than a test. I want to know the truth of what's going on these money grabs for the people that's paying it in Clackamas County. It ain't right. You see these buses running up down the street. I've started taking pictures and videos. It's not unusual to see them totally empty, sometimes 2 or 3. That's not right. Maybe in rush hour you might have a third of one full. They could downsize and at least have enough riders to pay for the gasoline. It's nothing but a big alligator that's eating the taxpayers' money. I pay TriMed tax because I got a business. I've never ridden on one of them. We think about trying to be respectful, and let me tell you, I understand what respect, loyalty, and I've talked about it, all those things, honor, and it's very difficult. It tests the public's ability to try to remain gentle, calm, and I can do that. However, after the microphone goes off, 2 weeks ago, Mr. Bernard gets up, the sound's off, using trash talk that I'm a sailor and we're not used to hearing stuff like that. He needs to clean it up. I'm not trying to put him down. There were several, in fact, you ladies, we learned as a sailor to be respectful to ladies. He can't even do that right here in this building. That's just not right. Trash talk is not good. There's never a wrong time to do something right for the betterment of all in Clackamas County. And that part could have a zip lip on it. I think I'd like to read the rules that govern what commissioners do and things like that. If that could be possible, I appreciate it. I have a lot more to say, but I'm going to zip. Thank you. I want to be respectful.
Thank you, Mac. That brings us to the consent agenda, and I'll ask the clerk to read the consent agenda by title.
Okay. Consent agenda. March 1st, 2012. Under Health, Housing, and Human Services, we have approval of a personal services agreement to provide physicians and locum tenens basis with Kelly Services. We have a board order approving the mental health director's designee to authorize a custody hold under ORS 426233. Under the Department of Transportation and Development, we have approval of revised bylaws for the Clackamas County Planning Commission. Under the Department of Communications, acceptance of the State Homeland Security Program grant for the purchase of backup dispatch radios and a mobile fire repeater. Under the Department of Employee Services, approval of the Administrative Services Agreement with Oregon Dental Services effective January 1st, 2012. And under the elected officials, approval of previous business meeting minutes. And that concludes the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Chair Savas, I move we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Consent agenda is approved. And that brings us to Commissioner Communication.
I can start. I actually don't have very much today. I found that in the last week I've spent a lot of time in communities that I've already highlighted over the last 6 weeks, and so I don't have a new community necessarily to talk about today that I'm prepared to discuss, so I'll do that for next week. But two things I did want to share. One is there's a whole lot of snow up on the mountain, and so our ski areas are open and thriving. They're actually moving into the spring season, and so that means reduced prices for lift tickets, and the snow is really great. So get up there and ski if you're a skier. I encourage you to do that. The other thing is I'd like to thank everyone who participated in the Plugged In event last night. We had an excellent live audience. We received comments from social media. We'd been receiving comments and questions in advance of the event. I think that it went really well. I wish we had a little more time, and I actually talked with some of my fellow commissioners about potentially extending it a little bit next year, because I think we had a number of questions that we would have liked to have answered more completely. So, but thank you for everyone who tuned in and who plugged in, so to speak, and participated in that conversation.
Well, I had an interesting opportunity this morning. I was at the JPAC, Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation meeting, and we had an important piece of business, and I think hopefully you'll share my enthusiasm for how this turned out. The Sunrise system, which is an important transportation system in the Clackamas industrial area, has been sort of gearing up for construction for a really long time. I mean, this project has been under consideration, variations of it for 20 years, and we've assembled all but $18.5 million of the $168 million total budget from sources including $100 million from the state and some federal money and different sources. And it's going to create, the construction alone is expected to create 1,005 construction jobs starting as soon as 2013. So it's really poised to begin, but we're missing $18.5 million of the total project cost. And we got agreement from the region today with some cooperation from a lot of different people and the need to advocate to put our project on the top of the list as the top priority for the region in this upcoming Tiger IV federal grant cycle. And so when I go to Washington, D.C. on Monday, one of the things that I'm going to be advocating for with our congressional delegation is to advocate hard for us to get this $18.5 million so that we can pay for this final piece of the Sunrise system, the lawn field road improvement and some safety, bike and pedestrian safety improvements in a related area. And we'll be able to get that project running and through the teamwork of the region, acknowledging that we should be the top priority and ours is the strongest project, I think we significantly boost the possibility of getting that money. So it was a good outcome.
That's great.
Well, I as well would like to thank everyone for participating in the event last night. And I do know that because of the number of questions we had in advance, we had limited time to really speak and answer those questions as fully. And some of those questions really are a greater dialogue. And so one of the things that we talked about last night was, I think two other commissioners were able to respond, was about jobs and what are we going to do to create jobs and help. And I think that just the piece that Commissioner Leininger just spoke to with regard to the Sunrise system, that's an opportunity to provide access to commercial industrial properties, which, future employers will be able to land on and have access to, which, will indeed have people who worked employed there, which is jobs. So, our job and responsibility, I believe, is to provide the infrastructure and to bring in employment lands or make existing lands within the UGB accessible for transportation so they can be built upon, so that there are landing spots for future businesses. And that's really our weakness. And that's what I would have said to the larger audience last night had I had that opportunity. I do want to point out, again, that March 7th, for any other follow-up, the first Wednesday of every month, we're doing the Commissioner Roundtable. And that's your opportunity to come between 5:30 to 6:30, 6:45, and if you have any issues, you want to carry on a dialogue we've had before or part of a dialogue we had last night, it's an opportunity to come once a month and speak to us. I think the last announcement I had was Clackamas County is conducting a community survey to measure public perception of priority issues in county services. An online survey is available now at www.clackamas.us. Please take the time to fill it out and let us know your opinion. And we should have the results, I believe, within a few weeks. So we're excited to find out what people's priorities are and speak to how they feel about a number of issues, from health and human services to transportation issues, roads and whatnot. So please take that survey and give us your input. And is there any other questions or comments from commissioners? With that, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.